In this video, we're going to discuss our final two capital budgeting methods. In the previous videos, we discussed NPV, internal rate of return, and modified internal rate of return. And here, we're going to cover two more, payback period and discounted payback period. While the first three methods on this list are more formal methods of project evaluation, we'll show that the last two, payback and discounted payback, are more informal, rule of thumb type of techniques. First, payback period. In simple terms, the payback period is the break-even point of an investment. You spend some money to get a project started, and the payback period will tell you how long it's going to take to get that money back. Here's a formula to compute payback period, but honestly, the formula is a lot more complicated than the actual procedure. So let's just jump into the calculation. Let's find the payback period for Project S here. With Project S, we'll spend $3,000 initially to get the project started, then we'll receive $1,500, $1,200, $800, and $300. To compute payback period, try to think about a bank account. You start with a balance of zero, and then you write a $3,000 check to get the project started. What's your account balance going to be at? It's going to be at negative $3,000. It's like you've overdrawn your account. After 1 year, you earn $1,500, so you add that into the account. So after 1 year, your account balance will still be negative, but a little bit less negative. It's going to be at negative $1,500. The next year, we add $1,200 to the account, bringing the total to negative $300. And then the next year, we add $800, bringing the total up to $500. In the final year, we add $300 to the account, bringing the account balance to $800. At which point in time did we break even? How long did it take us to fully recover the $3,000 investment that we made at time zero? Well, we broke even somewhere between year 2 and year 3. We can tell because the signs flip between those 2 years. At the end of year 2, the account was negative, and at the end of year 3, it was positive. So 0 is somewhere in between them. To compute payback period, we'll start with the number of full years needed to break even. That's 2 years. But it's going to be a little bit more than 2 years. It's going to be 2 point something. To get the fractional part, we're going to look at the last year we're negative and the first year we're positive. On the top of the fraction, we're going to put the amount needed at the end of year 2 to break even. That's $300 here. And at the bottom, we'll put the amount we receive in that following year. That's $800. So the payback period for Project S is 2.375 years. We can follow the same procedure to find the payback period for Project L. We'll track the account balances over time and identify the point at which the account balance flips from negative to positive. The break-even point will be somewhere in between. As before, the payback period will be the number of complete years needed to break even, that's 3 years here, plus some fraction. We'll look at the area surrounding the break-even point, and at the top of the fraction, we'll put the amount needed to break even after year 3, and at the bottom will be the amount we receive after year 4, giving us a payback period for Project L of 3.26 years. Now let's use payback period to make an investment decision. Should we do Project S or Project L? Management will usually set some payback criteria. They might require that all projects must break even or pay back within 3 years. If that's the case, then we would accept Project S since it pays back quicker than the 3 years that management requires. We'd reject Project L since it's too slow to break even. There are some fundamental issues with payback period. For one, there's no economics behind the decision criteria. Unlike NPV, which is connected to the value of the firm, and internal rate of return, which compares the project's rate of return to the cost of capital, the decision criteria for payback is completely arbitrary. Why did management set 3 years as a requirement instead of 4? There really is no reasoning behind that choice. And payback period is biased towards short-term projects that produce big cash flows early on. Imagine a project that takes a long time to get going, but once it does get going, it's going to be a huge moneymaker for the company. Well, payback period won't look favorably at that project. Even though it might be an amazing project, for payback period it just takes too long. Finally, you may have noticed that we didn't use time value money at all in these computations. We're treating money received at different points in time as if they're all equal. But we should know by now that's not going to be appropriate. We can resolve that last issue with discounted payback period. The procedure is going to be nearly identical. We'll just have one slight modification. Instead of doing our running total with the cash flows on the timeline here, we're going to first convert them to their present values. For example, we're getting $1,200 in year 2, but how much is that worth today? So I'll make a new row here to represent the present values. And the value today of the negative $3,000 is simply negative $3,000. So I'll drop that down. Next, we need to figure out how much that $1,500 received at year 1 is worth today. Using time value money, we find that $1,500 is worth $1,363 today. And we'll follow the same procedure for the rest of the cash flows on the timeline. Next, I'll cross out the original cash flows on the timeline because we are no longer going to use them. From now on, we're going to work with these discounted values that we just computed. From here, the process is identical to the payback period process. We're going to calculate a running total and identify the point in time in which we break even. And the discounted payback will be computed as the number of complete years needed to break even plus some fraction, where the numerator will be the amount needed to break even and the denominator will be the amount received, giving us a discounted payback period for project S of 3.21 years. And we can follow an identical process for a discounted payback period for project L, and we find that to be 3.89 years. And the decision-making process for discounted payback is the same as regular payback. Management will specify a cutoff point. Let's say, for example, that cutoff point is 3 years. If that's the case, we would have to reject both of these projects because the discounted payback for both is greater than 3 years that management specifies. It's important to note that these payback period methods are just quick rules of thumb. If you want to get a quick indication of the quality of the project, these methods could be useful. But to make a more formal decision, it's best to rely on more formal methodologies like net present value, internal rate of return, and modified internal rate of return.